Next level grit, next level grind. Tune in, come and watch next level shine. Military science, next level tech. No telling how deep the next level get. Next level grit, it's next level's time. Next level K9s, putting in that grind. Texas finest, blessed by the highest. Like and subscribe, next level going live.
It sounds so weird to have someone say, how did you get your passion for mold? It just sounds wrong. I never dreamt in a million years that I would care about mold. I think I mentioned this before on a podcast I was on. It's like we had to fill out cards when we were in grade 3 or 4 about what we wanted to be. I think it was astronaut, baseball player, and fireman or something. No mention of mold anywhere, Stephen, on that card of what I wanted to do one day. But the reason I do it is because our family was so affected and the medical system couldn't figure it out. And it was back in January of 2018, and our son came into our room, woke us up in the middle of the night, and he was just holding his right side, and he was in extreme pain, tears just coming out. He couldn't even stand straight. And I didn't know what was wrong. I thought he had a stomach bug or something, right? And we waited and waited, and it didn't seem to go away. And finally, I was like, maybe it's his appendix.
So you were saying about sometimes the industry, as far as information, is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, and like I'm sure is the same in canine detection, is everything's a sliding scale. Yeah. And you can have people that are really good, and you can have people that aren't very good, but yet they all have the same title. They all have the same job. And it's just like doctors, what do you call the person that graduated last in medical school? Doctor. And this is the problem, is that we have this wide spectrum and there isn't good, clear requirements and training for the mold inspection industry. And that's why I spend so much time with people and I make so many videos, and I have a 3-step process that we use with our clients and that I teach in the group, which is 1, ERMI Plus, which is a custom ERMI panel that I made up based on the damage I've seen in people's bodies over the years, and understand that the standard ERMI is not good enough. And we do that DNA testing to determine, is there a toxigenic mold problem here to start with? Yes or no? If there isn't, maybe it's not mold, but let's look and see what's there. So that's number 1. If there is a problem, then I love mold dogs as number 2. Because they have distinct advantages over human inspectors in ways. And yes, human inspectors can get places and do different things that dogs can do. But then step number 3 is a qualified, keyword being qualified, mold inspection done by a team that is at the far end of the sliding scale of understanding mold, mycotoxins, health effects, and where these toxigenic molds likely grow, and that they're not floating around always in the middle of your living room and in the hall outside the bedroom. And they dig deep into this, and that they'll use your number 1 and the number 2, use the ERMI Plus data so that when they're doing cavity tests and swabs and tape lifts and really inspecting well, that they know what they're looking for. But also they can't find everything. And that's why I love mold dogs, because they can come in and pick up things that there's no visual clues that there's a hidden problem in this area. And if it wasn't for, I've heard time and time again, my house was cleared by 1, 2, 3 inspectors, but then we had a mold dog in and they found this raging problem here and here. And when you're looking for the nearly invisible, like almost nobody sees mold that's driving health issues. It's under floors, in walls, under the shower pan, behind the shower, under cabinets, behind cabinets, coming up from the crawl, down from the attic. It's not growing where you see it, right? But you have all these people that are being left behind, mold sick people being left in toxic homes with the current standards in the mold inspection industry. And that's where mold dogs come in. They don't have an ego. They don't care about the standards. They're just looking for answers. They're like, hey, can I find what I'm trying to find here? And if I do, I'll let you know. And guess what? You could have had a dozen mold inspectors through that never found that spot because there's no visual cue to there being a problem. For example, under a window. Window's a perfect spot. Flashing could be a problem on the outside. The old caulking's dried up. You get a big storm, water gets in. But guess what? It's not a garden hose. There's no water pouring out under your floor, under your baseboard there. It can look absolutely perfect. And even if they take a moisture meter, that doesn't mean there's not mold. It's not a mold meter.
Yeah.
So they just walk right by, clear that area, And then you bring a mold dog in, he alerts at that window, or she. And now we found a giant festering problem.
So before I go and we kind of delve into the canine world, tell us how you got your love for mold. Like, where did everything start for Matt? Because you are looked at by many, and myself included, as a subject matter expert on this topic, and this is why I wanted to have you on. But where does that story start for Matt?
It sounds so weird to have someone say, "How did you get your passion for mold?" It just sounds wrong. It sounds, and I never dreamt in a million years that I would care about mold. I think I mentioned this before on a podcast I was on. It's like we had to fill out cards when we were in grade 3 or 4, but what we wanted to be. I think it was astronaut, baseball player, and fireman or something. No mention of mold anywhere, Stephen, on that card of what I wanted to do one day. But the reason I do it is because our family was so affected and the medical system couldn't figure it out. And it was back in January of 2018, and our son came into our room, woke us up in the middle of the night, and he was just holding his right side, and he was in extreme pain, tears just coming out. He couldn't even stand straight. And I didn't know what was wrong. I thought he had a stomach bug or something, right? And we waited and waited, and it didn't seem to go away. And finally, I was like, maybe it's his appendix. It's in the general area. He's in extreme pain. And so I drove him through a snowstorm an hour away to that children's hospital and carried him in because he couldn't walk. He was 10 years old then. And they, did an x-ray, did a urine test, did a blood test, did everything, and couldn't find anything wrong. Said there's no emergency here. There's nothing wrong with him. And I took him back 3 more times in the first 30 days, 4 times to the children's hospital ER.
Wow.
And the last time I went, the ER doctor took me into another room and said, you got to stop thinking about the body and think about the mind. Wow. Obviously, there's no physical problem here. Obviously, this is a mental problem. And it just infuriated me, as it would every parent, when you can see that you're a child that can't walk, and now he's dizzy, now he's nauseous, now he can't eat, he's got purple under his eyes, I'm carrying him up and down the stairs. And then to say that there's nothing actually happening here, it's something mental.
Not that we're going to promote violence, but did you want to punch him in the face when he said that?
100%. Yes. Yes. And I remember the one time there was a wheelchair. I carried him into the hospital, put him in a wheelchair there that they had at the door. And the doctor said, why do you have him in a wheelchair? Like, this is stupid. Like, why are you doing this? When they have no idea what's going on. And you're carrying around a 10-year-old on the front of you like they're a baby because they're in so much pain. And it infuriated me. And we spent 8-9 months in Western medicine. He had endoscope, he had colonoscopy, he had every single test done. And the pediatric gastroenterologist said he just pulled a muscle, pulled his fascia, had a little tear in the fascia here, and that's what it was. And I said, that makes no sense at all. I said, why then, if this is a muscle tear, why then, when he eats or drinks certain things, does he burst into tears? Like we would have a little bit of fresh lemon squeezed in our grape juice, he'd be in tears 3-4 minutes after. I was taking him to the chiropractor because we're trying everything, Stephen. There's no stone I left unturned. And we're going for chiropractic adjustments and red laser, and all different things there. And we were early. We stopped and grabbed a salad, had a vinaigrette on it, and he burst into tears before he was done the salad because of the vinegar was histamine, spiking his histamine and causing a mast cell flare in the small intestine, which felt like a knife going through his abdomen. And it was just so bad. And we wasted 8-9 months. But I assumed, I didn't know anything about mold then. I knew about general detox, and this was the start of me pivoting into the mold space, was going through this. And then it wasn't until the first clinic I took, I knew he had Lyme disease and co-infections. I muscle tested him for that. So that was my big answer. I was like, okay, here it is.
Yeah.
And then it cost $30,000 to go there, but it was worth it, Stephen, because it was there that our amazing doc that does energetic testing, uses vials, CPK, chiroplus kinesiology, said mold's coming up as priority in his gut the one morning. And we would go 4 or 5 days a week. We were there for 3 weeks. And he didn't mention mycotoxins or environment or anything. I think he was still learning too, but it's enough for me.
So which doctor was this? And you say that again?
So that was an energetic testing doctor at a clinic, which was in Kansas. They're now in Tennessee now. But they were able to tell me to mention mold. And then that was the catalyst I needed to go down that rabbit trail, because Stephen, we went home after that 3 weeks of treatment. He was feeling better. They did wonderful things for him. Absolutely. But we were out of our house. He was out of his room where the mold was in his window. I knew there was mold in his window in between the panes of glass. I just didn't know that mold could be toxigenic. I didn't know there's toxigenic, pathogenic, allergenic, benign. I didn't know any of this. So we get home after that. He goes into the house. I haven't even gone inside yet. He comes back out and goes, Dad, I got dizzy.
Wow.
He got
So
dizzy
soon.
immediately.
How long was he in there? Just immediately.
2 minutes.
Wow.
And so he came, I said, now I know it's environmental, because you were fine on the way home. You were fine our last week there. Now you're not fine. As soon as you walk in our house, what's environmental? Doc said mold. I know you got mold in between your panes of glass. And down I went the rabbit trail. And as a parent with a sick child, you don't sleep well. So I'd be up 2 a.m., 3 a.m., checking on him. I would have to go to bed with him sometimes. I'd be sleeping on his floor. I could tell how he was doing just listening to his breathing while I'm on the floor beside him. It was hell. And I learned about mycotoxins, and I learned about all these different ways that mold stresses the body. And that's when I realized this is a giant problem that no one's understanding. And we spent over 7 figures on I should say I stopped counting at 7 figures. We spent well over 7 figures on this journey to figure it out. And like I said earlier, I tried everything. There's not a type of doctor we didn't go to. There's not a test we didn't try. We did, if there was something to be tried, we did it. And we spent so much time and money doing that when we got through that, I said, I need to help people in this space. I need to pivot into this space and help people, because you got 2 professionals that are going to help you with this. Your medical doctors, which get 0 hours training on mycotoxicosis. They'll tell you mold can't do this. It'll do an allergy, and they'll run an allergy test. That has nothing to do with the toxicity, the accumulation of mycotoxins in your system. So professional number 1, just like they did for us, we had dozens of doctors go through. When he was admitted at Children's Hospital, we had teams coming in every day, and no one could figure out anything that was going on. They could see he had a heart murmur, because he had a bunch of cardiac issues from his mast cell issues. So chest pain, heart murmur, heart palpitations, shortness of breath, but no one knew. So your professional on the body side doesn't know. So then you go, oh my goodness, well, I wonder if it's mold. Let me get a mold inspection done. So then they come and do a test outside your front door, a spore trap in the middle of your living room, and one down the hall outside the bedrooms. And guess what? It comes back fine. Our house came back fine, Stephen. One of the cleanest, clearest, most perfect air tests I've seen was our house that was killing our family.
What is that air test called?
It's just a spore trap, air testing, ambient air testing. So they'd mount it 4 or 5 feet in the air on the tripod. They do one out 20 feet outside your front door, one in the middle of your living room, one down the hall. They may do more, they may do less. But the fact of the matter is, this general ambient air testing misses at least 95% of your molds present in a home. I get these tests from people every week of every month of every year. They share them on mold group, and guess what you see? You see some cladosporium. You see some aspergillus/penicillium/like molds. You might see a little smuts, a little ascospore, a little basidiospore, maybe a little alternaria. They're almost all the same. Now, the odd time you pick up a big problem. And if you pick up a big problem on an air test, you've got a giant problem cooking somewhere, because it misses the vast majority. And the problem is, again, they say, well, we're testing what you're breathing. Therefore, whatever's here is accurate to what you're breathing. What they don't realize is the difference between mold spores and mycotoxins. These mold spores, these worst toxigenic molds, toxigenic just means it's a mold genus or species capable of making mycotoxins, myco meaning fungal, toxin being a poison, a mold poison. Those worst ones are hydrophilic, meaning they need a lot of water to get started. So your Stachybotrys, your Cutomium, your Fusarium, these ones are the ones that are in the shower walls, behind the shower pan, under the bathtub, because the caulking isn't in place anymore. It's pulled away when the kids get out or splash out, or the silicone behind your bathroom countertop isn't, or it's not siliconed, and every time you shut off the valve, you throw some water against the mirror of the wall and it goes down. or you had a dishwasher leak, or you had any of these problems, these worst molds grow where that water's been going for extended periods of time. And guess what? Those spores are heavy and sticky. They barely come out, which is why in my Ermi Plus instructions is to collect the baseboard perimeter of every single room on every level of your home to raise our chances substantially of picking up if there's a problem or not. But those mycotoxins are a fraction the size. That's what's in the air. That's what's making you sick. That's what they're not even testing. So for them to say that this is the best test and it is the standard, they're 100% right, but the standard sucks. And this is why people are sick. This is why it's missed. This is one of the reasons that Mold Dog is in the middle of my perfect process for people finding mold.
So what test did you finally do that started your journey to getting your son healthier?
I did a mycotoxin test on him. I finally learned about mycotoxins enough that I could send off that urine test to see what was coming out of his body. And he had mycophenolic acid, which is a very immunosuppressive chemical from Penicillium brevicompactum. I forget what its range should be, 5 or 7. I think it's one of those. It's supposed to be under that. And his was over 500.
Oh my
And
God.
so his immune system was so shut down from that mold. And then that makes you more susceptible to being able to detox all the other toxins coming in from other molds. And then he got bit by a tick at a cottage. So then he had Lyme disease, Borrelia, Babesia, Bartonella, Ehrlichia, Rickettsia, Powassan virus lineage 2, because the immune system was so shut down. And this is why there's such a tight correlation between mold toxicity and Lyme disease, because your immune system gets shut down. And it's actually used, mycophenolic acid is used as an organ rejection drug. So that if I get a kidney transplant, I don't come out of surgery and my immune system goes, what is that? That's foreign tissue. That's not mad. I'm going to go attack it. That's how you lose an organ. So they literally give you this to shut down your immune system. That's why mold's so dangerous. And guess what? If you did 10,000 air tests in that home, they're not going to tell you if you've got mycophenolic acid in there. Even like your asp/pen/like doesn't tell you speciation. With Aspergillus and Penicillium, you have hundreds of species of each of those molds. Some are benign, some are pathogenic, some are allergenic, some are toxigenic, and some are a combination of all of them or part of them. There's so much to this, but your mold inspectors don't get trained on this. They don't have an understanding of this. And mold inspectors are the people that don't like me. Everyone else loves me because I'm sharing this information to help their healing journey on home and body, but they don't like it because I explain to people how the industry in general is a complete dumpster fire. Yes, we have good ones, but they're few. The majority following the standards leave sick people in toxic homes, just like they did us, just like they do our clients, just like they do tens of thousands of people in Toxic Mold Answers Facebook group.
So in your perfect scenario, in reference to the journey to get healthy, what is step 1, 2, and 3?
Number one is to determine if your home is what's causing it. If you're being poisoned, you got to stop the exposure. If it's carbon monoxide, open your windows, get out of your house, stop the exposure. And it's the same thing with mold. And that's why number one, I say do the Ermi Plus. Number 2, get a mold dog. Number 3, have qualified inspectors that will use your number 1 and 2 as part of that process. Because you can be on thousands of dollars of great supplements, Stephen, and spin your wheels because you're breathing poison. If you have a carbon monoxide leak killing your family, do you take more supplements? Do you buy better food? Do you buy a treadmill? Of course not. It's the same thing with mold. It's like if you're being poisoned, that's obviously priority number 1. And then with the body, we do the vibrant urine mycotoxin test. We do the mosaic oat. We do the vibrant gut zoomer. If there's potential PANS or pandas in kids, we do the neural zoomer plus. We do food sensitivity testing because it wrecks the body. So we've got these beautiful tests. We have the perfect order. We've got everything we need, but it's usually foiled. And I have a PSA post in my group called now I can't remember that I say it, the single biggest problem to making to recovering in your home or something like that. And it's about the inspection process because everything hinges on the inspection. When you hire a good remediation crew, they'll say, okay, give me your remediation plan from your inspector. Well, if you had an average inspector following the standards and say you have 12 different areas of water damage and potential mold in your home, one in the kitchen, one in the laundry room, 2 of your bathrooms have a small leak, maybe your crawl has chetomium in it, maybe your attic has stachybotrys in it, and they find all they do is a visual inspection, no cavity testing, no deep testing, no deep inspection. Then maybe they tape lift in your HVAC and say replace all your HVAC because we found mold there. I mean, that's easy picking. And is it there because it's a primary source or a secondary source? I don't know. We just found it there. But the problem is that when you get an inspection that's missing a lot of these sources, and say that family now spends $25,000 fixing that problem, guess who feels better after? Nobody, because they left 9 or 10 spots. Guess who heals in that home? Nobody. And I see this over and over and over. And this is why it infuriates me. And this is why mold inspectors don't like me, because I don't sugarcoat it. I say they're leaving sick people in toxic homes because they're not raising the bar far above standards in order to be able to help people.
Do you think it's a lack of knowledge, or do you think there's something else happening?
It's definitely a lack of knowledge, but what I'm finding is very few want to learn how to do it better. And it's a beautiful job to be able to just go visit with people while you run your air pump for 5 minutes, collect your 75 liters of air through that spore trap, send it off, get them good results, send it to them, and you happily move on your way. Easy job, good money, you visit with the family and your job's done. There's no problem. There's no report needed, remediation report needed. But what I'm seeing is most don't want to learn to do better. When I say, hey, you need to understand this or that, or here's what's actually happening, they balk, they get mad, their fur goes up on their back, and they want to fight about it rather than learn and grow. And that irritates the heck out of me. There's a lot I don't know. When someone can teach me something, I say, thank you, I didn't know that. But I'm not finding that in this industry. Very few. Now, there are a handful of companies out there and inspectors that are doing that. And I love that. And that's who we refer to. And I've even had a couple of inspectors book time with me on Zoom saying, hey, I don't feel we're doing what we should be. I think we're leaving something on the table here. Can you tell me what you know? Can you give me any guidance on how I can be helping chronically mold sick people better? Oh, that's like Christmas, Stephen. When someone like that reaches out and says, help me do better, help me understand this better, I love that. And there's some out there. I'm not dishing on everyone, but the vast majority of the industry is a dumpster fire, unfortunately.
So what's the second step? Now that we've got the first step down and you're giving our audience kind of an idea of some of the pitfalls or downfalls of some of the things that they may run into. And these are good scenarios to go by, because I would imagine more people than not, maybe they don't even realize that they're living in a in a situation where mold is in the house and potentially toxic. So I would guess, and I fall into this category, that I've had mold exposure without even knowing. We had an apartment, my wife and I, when we first moved to Texas, that we could see visible mold in and out the windowsill. And my wife started to get sick, and she did a little bit of research, and me not knowing what about anything, I was just like, okay, it's mold. We grew up in New Jersey. There was plenty of it when we grew up. It can't be that bad. So I didn't pay much attention until she took it like very serious. And she went to the management in the apartment and she said, hey, listen, we're having this issue. Can y'all do something about it? Their answer was to dismiss us, that it's not a big deal at first. And then their own essentially maintenance crew that's in charge of fixing doors and landscaping came to the house, and the way they took care of the mold was to pour bleach and kind of wipe it down and say, well, there you go. The problem is fixed. Well, that didn't last very long before my wife started to get sick again. And finally, we had just gotten the news that we were pregnant, or she was pregnant. I wasn't pregnant. And we were going to move to within the same community, a 2-bedroom apartment. So we kind of stopped fighting that fight, and we're like, yeah, we really like this area. Moved into a 2-bedroom, definitely inspected the area a little bit more, and didn't have that issue again. But if it wasn't for her consistency about her feeling not well, I probably would have dismissed it. And I'm sure this is a common occurrence. Would you agree?
Oh my goodness. I can probably count on one hand the amount of times I had where the man was sick and it wasn't the wife or the woman or the kids. And testosterone is mycotoxin protective. It's anti-inflammatory. Men don't feel sick. Even when there is a problem in men, they don't feel it as quick as what a woman or a child or even a pet is. So the most common is what the woman is sick. She's got severe neural issues, headaches, migraines, brain fog, cognitive issues, memory issues, head pressure, tinnitus, vision blurring, gut issues, digestion, absorption, constipation, fatigue, neuropathies, depression, anxiety.
Good
The
Lord.
kids, yeah, and those are just the common ones, Stephen. Unfortunately, it affects a lot more, but those are usually right here. There's problems here, and then down here. Also hormones. You get thrown out of whack from fusarium, zearalenone, and others. But kids, they're gonna have, like, if they're babies, toddlers, you're gonna have skin issues, rashes, eczema, colicky, food sensitivities, allergies. As they get older, more gut issues, head issues, behavior issues, and then PANS is the most common autoimmune condition that happens with kids, especially if they have chetomium at home. It can be others, but that's the most common mold. Pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome, that's what PAN stands for. It's just brain on fire. Autoimmunity's been activated due to the destruction of the gut, due to neurotoxins, due to the immune system, because the gut's been wrecked, which is the backbone of the immune system. So the immune system's now gone dysregulated and is now set up for autoimmunity. And when that happens in kids and it goes to the brain, you have rage, anger, OCD, food aversions, texture aversions, verbal tics, motor tics, bedwetting, regression of reading, writing, sensory processing disorders. Just all hell breaks loose. So now they can't function properly. It's like a whole new child. They can't go to school now because of the behavior issues or OCD or whatever it is. It's utter chaos. It's hell what that happens in these homes. You have cats peeing blood, dogs with sinus tumors, liver cancer. And then the man's usually fine, calling it can't be mold, otherwise, because I don't feel it, So that's the norm. That's how it usually comes out. Though it's a toss up between woman or kids, but it tends to be the woman usually, but not always. Kids show it quickly, especially if you have a newborn coming home to a home with chetomium in, and that small baby with a developing immune system gets met with these extreme neurotoxins, wrecking the gut, inflaming the brain. It's just utter destruction. And the good news is kids bounce quick. You get them clean air. Like, I had one client, I started with her when she was 8 months old, and the parents immediately got out and it was so bad their air testing picked it up. That's how bad their place was. Wow. And they went to a hotel, and I met them at 8 months. We checked up again in 4 months, and her eczema was 95% gone. Her mycotoxins were already coming down. It's beautiful. I mean, I'm still working with them now. Everything's coming along perfectly, textbook, as I want it to be, but it takes time. But she bounced so quick. It was beautiful. I love that.
So you're number 2. That's awesome, by the way. That's amazing that kids are that resilient, and we know that. Yeah. And then they can bounce back so quickly, and just getting them out of that environment, like you were saying, if you had some toxicity in your home, you're not going to get better if you fix it outside the home and come back. You haven't dealt with the problem. So I know the second part of what you recommend is the canine mold dog detection, and I'm sure we're going in deep in that. So for now, let's shelf that. What's the third thing?
Third is just qualified inspectors that use all the bells and whistles and take into account, number 1, your DNA results. Number 2, all the data that the dog gave as part of their full and proper inspection that goes from slab to roof sheathing. Not inspectors this exists, Stephen. There are inspectors that don't inspect. They just do ambient air testing and walk out. Then you've got your ones that will do that, plus look under your sink and see you don't have your P-trap's not dripping. That's enough. Other ones will take a tour of your home, say you've got a beautiful home. I'm sure this air testing's fine, which it almost always is. And now you're done. So you've got all along the spectrum. You want the ones that take 4, 5, 6, 7 hours at your home, that don't say, oh no, I don't go into the crawl space, or we don't do attics, or we don't do cavity testing. That's when you put a little hole in the wall and you suck the air from that cavity, whether it's in the shower wall, from the backside, not through the tile, to suck the air out of there, under cabinets, bathroom vanity, kitchen cabinets, under windows, that's called cavity testing. That's air testing. But that's good air testing because it's coming from a confined area. It's not diluted just by recirculating the same air in the middle of your living room. You're pulling from between those studs or under that cabinet. If there's a problem there, you're going to pick it up in that spore trap many times. It's not perfect either. No test is perfect. But what we do is layer all the tools, testing, and inspection methods we have to give us the highest chance possible of finding the nearly invisible. It's hard. I mean, it is really hard. And that's why I tell people it's about layering. You get a mold dog. I tell everyone after when the Ermi Plus is bad and we're on Zoom and they say, what do I do next, Matt? I say, is if there's a mold dog in your state, reach out. If there isn't, start expanding out from there to see who someone will come to you. I know someone will. It's just about finding who it is, because we want to have that scent detection to give us clues of areas of concern, so that when that last step, mold inspectors come, you say, here's what I'm looking for. Here's where the mold dog alerted. If you can just go dial in all the specifics, make sure we know where all the problems are, write me that remediation report if we're going to get it remediated, and then we move on to that step.
So as a consumer, what are some of the questions that we should be asking from our mold inspectors to make sure they meet that standard and that quality?
You want to look on their website for their Our Process page.
Okay.
Because good inspectors know that they're different from the standards. Okay. They're going to say, here's how we're different. If they don't say, here's how we're different, they're not different. They're not going to do it different, And if they say, oh, we'll do air tests and see what you're breathing, that's a red flag. You want them to say how long their inspection takes. You want them to share a sample report with you so you can see all the data that's going to be gotten. Like one of the teams that we send our clients to, they do air testing, but it goes to a lab that use AI for analysis so that you can analyze the whole slide, not just 30 to 50% of it. Okay. They'll do cavity testing in areas of concern. Yes, they have thermal imaging. Yes, they have moisture meters, but they need to understand the limitations of those tools, where many people don't. They have a digital sniffing device. And that goes around where? Same place mold dogs do. They go around all the baseboard, around your electrical outlets, under your window. And then the computer screen can tell you, is there high VOCs, high bacteria, high mold, and can help you learn areas of concern that, hey, let's spend more time in this area. They have automated particle sensors that sit in rooms while they're working in other areas that's analyzing the particulate going through that while they're working. We're layering. If your mold inspector just does air testing and shines his light under your sink, that's not enough layers.
I can imagine. And I'm just freshly, compared to you especially, getting into this industry. And it was funny because when I first met you, Susan had kind of put us together and talked about, hey, you both are very serious about your respective professions and everything that you're doing there. And what was interesting, I was in South Africa. We were doing some work on anti-poaching dogs, and I met you and I heard what you had to say, and you introduced me to this crazy world, and it's like a blessing and a curse at the same time, right? It's like, it's ignorance is bliss.
Perfect way to put it. That's the perfect way to put it.
Because it really is. It's ignorance is bliss. And if I don't know this danger's out there, I'm not worried about it. But now, damn it, you have told me all these things that I have to worry about. And now I'm like looking around my home and I'm like, I wonder if that's normal. Like, I don't know if that's normal. So we'll take a step back. Susan Russell is the owner of Mold Dog Nose, and she wanted to have a canine professional look at her procedures and everything that she was doing, because she wanted to make sure that the work that she was doing in Mold Dog Nose was caring for people and accurate. Because just like you were saying, these inspectors, they're not all the same. And, dogs are not all the same. Handlers are not all the same. Companies are not all the same. So I wanted to make sure that I aligned myself with someone who I believed in their vision and had a heart to serve others, right? At the end of the day, we have to serve people. There's an opportunity as a business, sure. But if you make the focus your main focus, I feel like all those things will fall in line. And I really appreciate that about Susan and the way she handles Mold Dog Nose. So we had a lot of questions going into the realm of what a mold dog can do, what it can't do. different standards, and most of the people who listen to my podcast kind of know a little bit about my background. I'm sure that some of your audience, from your toxic mold Facebook group specifically, will be listening to this. And my bio's on there because you had posted something, so they can look at that. I don't want to spend too much time there, but I do want to get into some of the questions because there were some really, really good questions. Props to your community. I thought I was going to get like all the basic stuff, like can I pet your dog and all these funny things, but I I got some really serious questions, and I know that you had like marked some of them down. So without further ado, shoot some of those questions at me, and I'm going to do the best I can to answer them.
You are right. People just shotgunned perfect questions. So I've made a big list here, Steve, and for you to knock them out. So we're not going to be able to spend a ton of time on all of them. I would love to, but I would love to get through the majority of these. And there's like, there's over a dozen here. So
Sure.
here's what I have. Number one, because this is a big concern from people. And I've always had a dog growing up. We had multiple German Shepherds as a child. We have a ridiculous little cockapoo now. And I love dogs. And I understand when people say, oh my goodness, is this safe for the dog? So I wanted to start with that because that's the very first thing. When we talk about mold dogs, sometimes people go, I won't even entertain the idea because I don't like putting a dog in danger. What do you say to people when they ask, is this safe for a dog?
Sure. I think it's important to start with nobody's more concerned about their dog than the handler, right? My personal dog here, not only is he a part of my everyday living, he's a part of my kids' lives, my wife's lives. So I faced this question head on as a police officer who's still active, still working a dog quite often, right? I'm chasing a guy with a gun, super dangerous, right? And we're asking our dog to track him down. Well, what do we think is going to happen at the end of that track? He's probably not going to go easily, let's say. So there's various amount of dangers, and we always have to take calculated risk and that's a kind of a patrol related way to answer that. But specific to detection, there are things that are very dangerous, like explosives, right? There are components in explosives that are very dangerous to dogs. Coming to mind, there's some oxidizers like potassium chlorate and potassium perchlorate that a long-term exposure to the dog will absolutely affect them. Long-term exposure to humans will affect them in negative ways. Same thing with the chemicals in nitroglycerin dynamite. If handled too much, or if you're around it, it'll give you headaches and all kinds of stuff. So we're very familiar on the detection side of things that are potentially dangerous to the dogs in many, many ways. Most recently, the addition of fentanyl detection dogs is really hitting that home. And I think that's probably the most, is the thing that's most related to mold, right? Because a simple exposure to fentanyl could really wreak havoc to the system, the cardiovascular system to a dog, and we can have some real problems. And we've had unfortunate dogs be exposed. I have been exposed to fentanyl and had to go to the hospital. Not a fun thing. I don't recommend it to anybody. It's not fun at all.
Oh, I can't believe that.
Yeah. So speaking from experience, I understand how potentially dangerous and potentially fatal this could be. So what are the protocols that I use? Well, there was a time where if my dog alerted on a traffic stop to a vehicle, I would say that's an alert, open up the door and allow him to continue going in. Well, what if there's fentanyl in that vehicle? I have a responsibility now to not put my dog in that car and put him in a potential dangerous situation. So what's my protocol now? Dog alerts to the outside of the car. I tell him he's the best, most handsome boy in the world. I put him in the car. We have kissing and loving, like, good boy, you're the best. And now, as a human who has the ability to open doors safely and process a vehicle with my eyes, I go in there very carefully. And the minute that I see anything that is toxic, potentially like fentanyl, I stop. There's no reason to move forward. I'm never going to put my dog in there. So think about that to mold. I go into a home and I'm visibly inspecting first to make sure that there's no visible mold, that a hard exposure to mold, like my dog having that contact with mold. There's no reason to do that. If I see it, chances are I'm not even going to allow my dog to get anywhere near it, just like fentanyl. So the question will always be, is there a risk to a dog that is around mold? The answer, of course, is yes. the idea of what our responsibility as handlers will always be mitigate that risk as much as possible. And we do that by inspecting the home first for anything visible. And then after we do our inspection, we come up with a plan on how to safely deploy that dog. And the dog is not long-term exposed to this. Even in training, it's very limited to the amount of exposure we'll allow a dog to be around actual mold. So I want to assure everybody, nobody loves our dogs more than we do. I certainly appreciate the notion of people thinking like, man, I'm concerned about this. I love that. It means you have a heart for a dog, and I certainly appreciate that. I can tell you that part of the protocols also, because this is a newer industry, is to, instead of doing the old annual check for blood work and stuff like that, it's time to be responsible and say, well, we are putting dogs in potentially dangerous situations. We need to have more than just the annual check. So personally, for me, it's every 6 months. And then anytime I see my dog do anything different than normal, if he seems lethargic, if his urine doesn't look the same, I know that's weird because I look at my dog's urine for clarity and everything else.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, you have to, right? Like, this is part of our responsibility as handlers. Same thing with stool movement. If he's having a hard time, is it the same? Is it diarrhea? All those things will prompt me quickly to say, I'm going to the vet. I'm going to get this checked out. That's our responsibility. I think if all those things are in line responsibly, the likelihood of a dog having a long-term exposure and being really sick is little to none if you do it correctly. Are there risks? Yes, but we can mitigate those things.
So that brings me to my next question, which is, how long is that average exposure? Like if a human inspection can take 5 hours, a dog going through doesn't take 5 hours. What could that look like on, say, an average 2,000 square foot home does it take for them to do the job that you have for them?
Sure. I'll tell a little story today, and it happened actually this morning. Not me specifically, but one of our canine handling teams, Stella and Tala, were doing an inspection at a home for the Johnson family. And the Johnson family had an issue. They had some tests come back, urine analysis and blood analysis to say Mama Johnson, let's call her, is absolutely not feeling well. And she has positive results of something in her system. And oddly enough, Tala had gone out to that home. Stella and Tala had come out to that home a couple of weeks prior. And this, you didn't ask this question, but I'm going to answer another question. Is, in this specific case, the dog went through the house rather quickly and probably spent sniff time, probably maybe 10 minutes total, and got out the house. The handler recognized, you know what, we didn't have any alerts in the home. We had some interest here and there, but no alerts. That night, the dog is sick. The dog is having diarrhea. Dog is not feeling well. And it was interesting because I didn't get the results about the results of the sniff until afterwards. And I spoke to Mrs. Johnson. She's actually on your toxic mold page. And she had mentioned, hey, I had this happen. We had a mold dog come out. Mold dog doesn't alert. I'm concerned. What's the next steps? So I read that. I was like, oh, that's interesting because that's one of our dogs. I immediately called the handler, said, hey, tell me about this deployment. She's like, everything went well. Tala was moving a little faster than normal. I don't know what was going on, but eventually she had diarrhea, wasn't feeling well. Well, I don't think the diarrhea was because of the mold. So let me just throw that out first. I think the dog was actually just sick, and the actual inspection did not go as well as it should have because of that. So today we did our redo assessment, and in 2 different locations, not only did Tala alert to, but we were actually able to visually afterwards recognize that there's something there, which is a huge improvement to their first deployment. Which 2 things there. Dogs are not infallible. They're going to make mistakes. And in a lot of those times, there are a lot of things that could play a role in why those mistakes could happen. In this situation, the dog was sick. And I don't know about you, but I'm sick. I'm not at my not 100% either. So it's really cool to see the dog fresh and feeling well. The dog was taken to the vet afterwards to confirm everything was good. She just had a stomach issue and she was having diarrhea, wasn't feeling well, and probably was moving extra fast to get out of that house because she does not want to have an accident in the house. So dogs will be dogs.
Absolutely.
But I feel like I missed your question because I went around. So Remind me of what you were saying. Oh, a sniff.
Average time in an average size home.
Yeah. So today we slowed things down for Tala, and we had every opportunity to go in first, make sure that we understood what the client was concerned about. We spoke to husband, wife, and child, and we got to get a good idea of what their lifestyle's like, how much time they're spending at home, so on and so forth. And a lot of homeowners will have an idea of where the issue is. And I would always say, listen to those people and their concerns, because no one knows their home better than they do. And it was exactly what her concern was exactly where Tala ended up showing the most interest and alerting to, which was basically like a jacuzzi style tub.
Oh yeah, those are just waiting to leak, Steve.
Yeah.
Those are awful.
Oh, well, we found some stuff, Matt. And we weren't even looking. We just opened some of the vents that were on the inside, and as clear as day, there was an issue. And that it warmed my heart, because we're able to make a poor situation better, and we're able to recognize, hey, there will be issues with dogs sometimes. We have it is our obligation, of course, to be transparent about it and do something, do the right thing afterwards. So it was nice to see all that come together. And now the question is, she had texted me afterwards saying, what now, Stephen? Do you have recommendations? So I'm sure she's listening to this podcast, because I told her I was going to speak to you. And I think you've given her some guidelines on what she should be looking for. But I don't know if you typically would recommend people that you've had success with in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, because that's where she's at. I'm sure she could message you privately if you don't feel comfortable doing that. But it's nice to get some guidance either way.
Absolutely. Yeah. The next step would be to find someone to dig into that a little more, because you can have mold in those jets, but with so many hoses going to those jets, underneath those tubs is just an octopus of water lines, and it only takes one. It only takes one joint to be a little too loose, or one joint to just give way or have a little crack in the pipe, whatever it is. And that's why those tubs, while they sound amazing and would feel amazing in your home, like in one of our houses, we had one, and we had silverfish in that bathroom. Every couple times a year, I'd see a silverfish, and I'm going, that's when I didn't know. So I was like, oh, that's weird. And then once you learn, Steven, just like you said earlier, nothing looks the same again. You don't look at things the same. You go, oh my goodness, you know what was probably under there. And it would have been, because it was decades old. And there's silverfish in there, but I didn't know. But there's just, and this is why I talk about so many layers of inspection, because maybe a dog stick, or maybe there's moisture there, but the moisture meter won't hit it. But maybe Instascope will, or maybe you have a better understanding of a visual assessment of what could be happening on the inside, or you see a problem on the exterior of the home that says, hey, you're putting the interior of the home at risk because I found this. There's so many layers to it. And that's why we layer. And the dogs are such an important layer, just like our tub that we had. There was no visual sign of any problem at all. If you ran a moisture meter there, nothing. If you ran thermal imaging there, nothing. Those are great tools if you understand their limitations. Now you bring a dog in, and a dog, I bet you, would have hit at the bottom trim of our jacuzzi tub. There were silverfish, Stephen. You don't have silverfish unless there's a problem cooking somewhere, right?
Tell me the significance. Is it specific silverfish? It might sound like a stupid question, but I feel like we should dive in, because I know what they are, but what is the significance there?
They love damp wood.
Okay.
Because it's easy. It's just like ants. When I found a window problem with a thermal camera in my house, when I looked only during a rainstorm, there's an inside tip for you guys. Don't test on the driest day of the year. If you have an overt constant problem, it'll show up. But I went around with my thermal imaging during a rainstorm, and it showed a problem that would only show up during the storm. And so I peeled off all the siding on the house, pulled out the insulation. At the top of my window was all damp. Water was working its way over, and it was all ants living in there. For the same reason silverfish love that area. It's easier to chew through. It's easier to nest. They can mold it and chew it and dig it out. And that's why you don't like seeing ants and silverfish and different things, because, I mean, it's not seasonal ants. Like I just had ants in here a week ago, and they're coming in our front door because I had don't tell anybody, but I had a bag of chocolate peanut butter cups on the floor, and someone smelled that and told all their friends. So these ants were trying to work their way in. But yeah, so that's always a sign too. I mean, there's so many things that can give you an idea if there's a problem, but there isn't all the time. And that's why we need these special tools and dogs and everything to try to figure out, is there a problem here I'm not seeing, which is the vast majority of the time. All right, great. Okay, now here's a basic question that I added on here because I don't have a good understanding of it. And it is, what's the difference between smell, scent, and odor? What are dogs actually picking up on? Because I read once someone in the canine field talk about this, and I was like, I'm confused. I don't even know. So is there a difference between smell, scent, and odor? Are they the same? What's a mole dog doing?
Yeah, sometimes it's like a tomato thing. Sometimes like they mean the same thing. But I've seen it where different parts of the world, they call certain things we call here different terms. So definitions are important. And oftentimes when people ask a question like, hey, what does sniff mean? Like, what does that exactly mean? When you're saying a dog is sniffing, is it actually mean the dog is an odor, or does it mean that it's just being a dog? How do you know the difference between the dog smelling dog odor over here and actually mold over here? So it's a really important question because definitions mean things. So what is a dog sniffing out depends on, of course, what it's trained to sniff out. Our process is pretty simple. We teach this sniff game, right? You have to be able to close your mouth and sniff in individual boxes that have different odors behind them that they can't see. And we teach you what to respond to and what not to respond to. So I don't want to get too far on a tangent here, but the training aspect of what we're asking is incredibly important to the clarity of the dog in perspective of what it's supposed to alert to and what it's not supposed to alert to. So if you take a dog, we're talking about mold, so we'll stay there, who is trained to sniff out mold, and it goes into a home for the first time, and it has all these distractor odors, it is still a dog who's going to give attention to certain distractor odors, whether it be another dog, a cat, food left out, you name it. So the difference in intensity and the body language of the dog around trained odor will actually be different around what we call novel odor or novelty odor. So that really depends on the training of the handler. Have they been put in those situations? Can they see when those dogs are actually just smelling things that they're interested, or actually are in odor and sniffing with intensity, trying to get to the greatest source of trained odor? And I hope that kind of answers your question without having to go into the difference between specifically, what were the three that you had mentioned?
Smell, scent, and odor. But that brings me to another question, a great question. I've seen people ask it before, is if someone has pets, should those pets be removed from the home when a canine comes in to look for mold? Or are they okay with them? Or is it I would assume it'd be a giant distraction. If I was a dog and there's another dog, because I know our dog goes crazy for other dogs.
Oh yeah. 100%. I mean, if I'm using a mold detection dog to sniff out mold, or a drug dog to sniff out drugs, the protocols are the same. We want to minimize as many distractors as possible, right? The beautiful thing about mold detection is we can control the environment in which the dog is sniffing, and that's one of the things that we can control. So we would ask the dog to either be placed outside during the inspection. Same thing with cats, maybe put them in a safe place in your garage or somewhere, a place where we know that we're not going to have the dog sniff, but it's still safe, right? We obviously want to keep your animals safe. Sometimes having them just go off to the vet for the day, or a cat sitter or a dog sitter for the day, is the answer, just depending on your situation. But it absolutely will be a distractor if a live animal is there. At the end of the day, we are dealing with dogs who don't know if they should be in self-preservation mode, because not all dogs get along, which you have to worry about potential fights and stuff. So we make it simple. A mold dog knows we have a protocol that we tell everybody before we get there, which is, 30 minutes prior to us arriving, if you'll remove all pets from the home, same thing with their food, same thing with water. We want to minimize those distractors.
That makes perfect sense. I thought that would be the answer, but I thought I better check. Okay, now Rachel had multiple great questions here. So Rachel, I hope you're watching because these are from you. Rachel's first question is, what breed makes a good mold dog? Are there any that you know are bad, or is it just the training? Because I've heard of people saying, this person will train my dog and it doesn't matter, just bring our dog and they can be trained. I don't know. You tell me. You're the master trainer, not me. Are there preferred kinds of dogs or the ones you stay away from? Is any dog can do it? I don't know. Explain that to me.
Yeah. So anytime we talk about detection, there are characteristics that you would want from those dogs. Think of them as athletes. All right. So I'm, 5'9", 5'10" on a good day. I'm probably not going to be a professional basketball player, just between you and I, Matt. Probably not going to happen. So even if the greatest basketball player who ever lived, Michael Jordan, not LeBron James, was supposed to try to train me, right? There's a very low probability that I'm still making it to the NBA. So if you ask me to take your Chihuahua to be a police dog, I could be a very good trainer. But if the characteristics are not found in that dog to do the job, it's not only not fair to the dog to ask him to do something that's not within his skill set, which is really important. So I always, with caution, when I hear stories like that, like bring me any dog and I can make it a detection dog, I'm like, whoa, I don't see how that's possible, and also not fair to the dog. There's something to be said about the game of sniffing being very fun, and every single dog can do that. We have sports. They're like civilian sports for civilian dogs it's called like scent work, where they'll put fragrances out for your dog to find, and they'll do these pretty little alerts. And yeah, your Chihuahua will actually look like a trained police dog. And it's the cutest thing in the world. And by the way, I love it. And I recommend it for all dog owners, but it's different to play at the YMCA basketball as a 40-year-old with knee problems and actually get me in a game with actual NBA players. We have to be honest and we have to be fair with our dogs. If it's not within their instincts and their skill set, we should not be putting them in.
So if you had to say 1, 2, or 3 top breeds of dog that would be good for it, what would that look like? If someone says, I'd like to know what that looks like.
Sure. I think any hunting dog, any of the hunting breeds, any of the you're going to have your Shepherds, your Malinois, your Dutch Shepherds, your Labs are fantastic for this kind of work. But let me describe why they're good. Because just as much as a German Shepherd may be good at this, I've seen and failed more German Shepherds than any breed.
Interesting.
So it goes back to not all German Shepherds have the same characteristics. So there are psychological traits that I look for in a dog, which are soundness, which is the ability for a dog to go into in its environment or a new environment and feel comfortable. We call it like environmental soundness. Hardness, which is the dog's ability to recover after a perceived or real negative thing happens, whether it be a psychological negative thing, a physical negative thing. We're talking about maybe someone steps on the dog by accident on its tail. So hardness is very important. How is that dog going to react to that? Are they going to stay neutral, which is exactly what we want? Or sometimes they'll show an aggression, which is what we don't want. Sometimes that hardness is so low that now that environment means something very negative. They no longer want to be there. So, and then the third one will be irritability threshold, which could be something like how they deal with heat, right? Or extreme cold, anything that irritates them, whether it's a child poking at their shoulder over and over and over again. Can I pet your dog? Can I pet your dog? Eventually, that irritability threshold, again, we want it to be neutral.
Yeah.
But if it's not, that could potentially cause problems, because now, even if they have all the instincts to do the work, the hunting instincts, they won't do it anymore because the psychological traits, which kind of drive those hunting patterns, are not there. So they will only do it in a sterile environment that they're very familiar with, but never do it in a new environment. And that's all we deal with mold dogs, is new environments, new homes, new situations, new smells, new animals. You name it, the dog has to overcome that. And those psychological traits have to be sound in order to do that.
I'm smiling because that blows my mind. I never once considered any of that, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I love that. I love this conversation. And I've got so many more questions for you. So let's go. But that makes so much sense. I'm so glad we're doing this because it makes sense because I'm just thinking of our own dog and our past dogs. And I'm like, sometimes they'd be irritable or they would be, but even our great German Shepherd, I can see it would throw them off, So anyway, thank you for that. That was something I wasn't expecting to learn today. Okay. Do dogs ever get tired of the work and become less accurate? And that doesn't just mean for the day, but say over months or years. Can dogs say, this was great, thanks, but I'm done, either on the day or on the month?
Yeah. And it goes even back to the psychological traits too, because I look at those psychological traits as essentially cups that the dog is born with. As a handler, I want to fill that cup. I want as much of that as possible. If that cup is depleted because of a negative situation, as a trainer, I have to fill that cup up to get a high level of soundness, hardness, and irritability threshold. So do they get tired? Well, when a dog gets tired, which they will, right? Because they're organisms just like us that have limitations. They absolutely, their workability and their accuracy goes down just like humans. This goes back to you're certified as a team because it's up to the handler to determine whether the dog is actively working, if they need a break or not. There are times where if the dog is working, 6 homes a day for 4 weeks, yeah, there's a good possibility by the 5th week, they're going to say, I need a vacation. And who more is better suited than the handler to recognize that? So if it's a 1-year-old dog, he may go the whole year at that schedule, not a problem. You talk about a 9-year-old dog, a 10-year-old dog. I don't know about you, brother, but I'm not the same as I used to. And I get tired rather quickly. I've taken more naps now than I've ever seen my grandpa take. So the truth is, it depends on the dog. And it really is something that the handler has to focus on. We haven't talked about certifications, but part of the certification, the evaluator is notating if the handler is working well with the dog.
See, that was my next question is what things do you look for in a handler? Now that we're understanding better what makes a dog good for this job, what does that mean for a handler? Because I love how you put that. You're being certified as a team, not just a dog. You can't just certify a dog and then some stranger gets that dog for the weekend and go mold inspect. There needs to be a meshing, a relationship there. So what does this look like on the handler side? Now that we've been talking about dogs so much, what the handlers need to know and what kind of, do they have traits that they need to have? I mean, I know they have to be observant because you've said so many times, you have to know, like we talked about other dogs, is this dog reacting to mold or is it reacting because it smells that a dog was on the couch or something? So tell me about handlers. What makes a good handler?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the list is endless, right? And so we have a lot of police departments that will hire me to be on their hiring board for their new handlers. And this is a good question that they ask is, Steve, in your opinion, specific to law enforcement, what makes a good handler? And whether it's law enforcement or private sector, I promise you it's the same. You want someone with integrity, that's a self-starter, that is going to not only care about the dog and taking care of it, because they are their caretaker, they're their trainer, whether they like it or not. Yes, they're their handler. They're essentially a pack member, a leader. They're all these different roles to the dog. And each one of those means that there has to be some sort of training. I can't give medical attention to my dog if I don't know what medical attention to a dog looks like. I cannot diagnose whether my dog is having issues with you name it if I've not been trained to recognize those things. So the handler is I'm not going to say is the most important person in the team because they're equally as important. But without a good handler, you have a failed team. Without a good dog, you have a failed team. We've had handlers who have proven themselves as good handlers on their second dog, and that dog and that handler do not mesh. And we have to reevaluate and team them up with a different dog. So this is why certification, which I'm sure we'll get to that, in police work is incredibly important. To your point, nobody can take my certified dog and work it on the street. It's not going to happen. You don't know his mannerisms. his breathing patterns and everything else he does to communicate with me. So yeah, the handler is very important. You would want to see a certain amount of hours, but I'm careful with that, giving a number. The industry standard is 160 hours of a handler school of some kind. I think it's a nice number. The problem with that, Matt, is just like inspectors, the school that they go to means a lot. So I can easily find a handler with thousands of hours, and I do an evaluation. I'm like, this guy has no idea what he's doing, or this gal has no idea what they're doing. They're not reading their dog. They're stuck on some type of training module does that fit the system, and they don't even recognize it. And oftentimes, I hate to say it, and I'm not going to name any names, they think they're the greatest handler in the world. And you look at it and you're like, holy cow. So when I'm asked to evaluate teams, it's one of my favorite things to do, is I'm not there to necessarily be their friend. I will be friendly, but I'm there to be honest about everything. And we do profiles of dogs, but we all do profiles of dog teams. So I gave you 3 things that we look on the psychological traits. We haven't even talked about instincts. We isolate those and we score them just like a video game, right? So we score each one of those soundness, hardness, irritability threshold from 0 to 10, 10 being the most. We do the same thing with the handler. Like how good is he in this specific regard? Is he reading the dog well? How's his leash management? How is he communicating the dog? Is he yelling at the dog? Is he screaming? By the way, dogs can hear much better. If a handler's yelling at his dog, probably doesn't know what he's doing, just as a red flag. That always bothers me. I don't know why, but it does. Like, stop screaming at your dog. He absolutely can hear you. He can hear if it's loud in my ears, it's certainly loud in his ears. So
absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's great. Here was another great question. It was about male versus female and spayed or neutered. Are there anything that says this is going to make the dog not as good at finding sense, or does it not matter at all?
This is where the vets are going to be very mad at me because I'm going to say something controversial. I'll preface this with, I have seen, certified, and trained thousands of dogs from all over the world. And I can tell you that if the dog has the instincts and psychological traits to do the job, if it gets spayed or neutered, I've never seen a decrease in its ability to work. If you have a pet at home that is just a lot, people will say, like, they're all over the place, the energy's crazy, maybe they're getting a little bit aggressive. Could the spaying or neutering help? Sure. But that's a different thing when you talk about working dogs and their ability to work. So the vets will say yes, but just hear them out. They're talking about your average dog at home, and they have anecdotal evidence to suggest that it helps. And I've heard people say that. Once I got my dog spayed or neutered, the behaviors, the marking behaviors, the peeing in the corner stopped, and all this other stuff, that's great. But as far as workability, we've had dogs, and most of the time, by the way, we only spay or neuter if there's some kind of medical issue. So it doesn't happen when they're 6 months or 8 months or a year. It's usually a little bit further on, and we've had to do it. I've seen zero difference in that dog, zero. So, and that has happened dozens of times in my career.
Good. Well, that's great data. Here's a question I love. Treat versus toy trained. And I didn't even realize myself that toy training was an option. I had only heard and seen treat trained, but it led me to the exact same question, which is, does a dog get full? Does a dog say that's enough treats? Is the dog going to alert just for treats? I've even seen people in the group say, well, we are the last stop on their day of inspections. And I feel like the dog didn't really perform because they were full and didn't care about the treats. So have at it. Is there a better one? Can you have a perfectly good treat trained animal, or is toy better because, or are there drawbacks to toy that I don't know about? Maybe they had enough fun. I don't know. What does it mean to you, Stephen?
Oh, it's such a good question. And this is something in our handler school that we address in detail because it deserves it. So kudos to the person who asked this. Very, very important question. And all of the things that you ask, as far as being concerned, are legit concerns. Because I don't know about you, Matt, but I love filet mignons. But if I had 3 a day for 5 days straight, that's the last thing I want to eat. When I'm not hungry, the motivation to work goes down. To eat rather, it goes down. So there is something to be said about that. But before we dive into that, I want everyone to understand what actually motivates the dog. Why does a toy work? Why does food work? And then your audience can kind of come up with their own conclusion about what they prefer. Both, you see at the highest levels, both food and toy use. The ATF that's responsible for securing the nation all over the place for explosives and detecting explosives utilizing their dogs. They often use food reward. Most of the teams that I work with on the local and federal side, maybe DEA, use toy rewards. So what gives? Why one over the other? It comes back to what motivates that dog. And you can make the argument, it comes back to your mission, which I'll hit on. So what motivates your dog? These dogs are selected. I talked about psychological traits, but now we're going to talk about instincts. These dogs are selected because they're hunters. And the hunting process starts with locating, pursuing, which would be chasing the prey, and then engaging or biting that prey. And then the last part, if it's a lion and a gazelle, consuming that prey. So there are 4 parts of that prey process. So think about, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. In this case, it's mold. Mold, so let's talk about, for analogy sake, the mold is a rabbit that's hiding, and the dog is a wolf that's trying to get the rabbit. The dog has to locate the rabbit first, right? So it's going to use its nose to do that. Let me locate it. And it's going to pursue it to the greatest source of odor. Because if there are 10 rabbit holes and the rabbit went in hole number 10 and the dog gets to number 1, that's not helping him eat because the rabbit's at number 10. So we teach the dogs, go to the greatest source of trained odor because that's where your reward is going to come from. Most dogs love the engagement part, which is the third part. This is the biting, right? This is where dogs love to play tug of war and stuff like that. So a dog that values the tug of war, we'd love to give them a toy because that's their motivator. However, that same dog that loves the tugging may not love the consumption part. When they're in the predatory mode of hunting, they're not necessarily wanting to eat at that moment. Their motivator is the hunting process. Locate, pursue, and engage. That's all they're thinking. Locate, pursue, engage over and over and over again. Now, you have dogs that don't care about the engagement. They love to chase. A lot of our labs fall into this category. They love to locate. They love to pursue. They'll engage a little bit, but what they really love is the consumption. So those dogs, we say, okay, what motivates you? Consumption? Then don't worry about the engagement. I will give you consumption in replacement of the engagement. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So now we're taking training and we're saying we're going to customize it to what motivates our dog. And in my opinion, that is how every trainer should look at it. What motivates your dog? You utilize what motivates it, and you won't go wrong.
Wow, that was interesting. Food motivates me, so I know which one I'd pick.
Me and you both, brother.
Chocolate covered almonds specifically. That's what the trainer needs in their little pouch to keep giving me. I'll do anything. Okay, now talking about hunting for mold, a common question is what molds can a dog find? And it's I don't know. I don't want to ask any leading questions.
No leading questions.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll get to it.
And let me tie this into another question. We'll bang them out together. Is a dog looking for mold or mycotoxins or both? So,
okay. So I've heard this so many times, and I love being a part of your group, Matt, online because I'm in different groups too. But I'm always that guy that just watches and listens and kind of chuckles and laughs. And I'm not the dude to comment a lot because I know that sometimes when there's a difference of opinion, you have like these keyboard warriors, they call them, right? And then there's these words back and forth, and I'm just not interested in that. So, and I've heard everybody online be sure about one thing or the other. So let's clear the air for your audience one final time. Maybe not a final time. That's not the right way to say it. One time. So what do we know dogs can sniff as far as at what depth can they smell at? Let's start there because this is going to be a clarifying way to address the issue. So mold itself can be millimeters, centimeters. We know that anything we can see with our visible eyes, the dogs can detect. So mold, check. Sure. Easy. Now, what about spores? So even spores itself can be on the micrometer, which that scale easily detected by the dog, no problem whatsoever. So mold, spores, 100%. There's no one in the scientific world that's going to combat that and say that's not accurate. Now, mycotoxins. This is where the question is. I've heard you answer this, and I've been very interested about the response to your answer, because the truth is the mycotoxins is at the nanometer. And what else is at the nanometer that we know dogs can sniff out is DNA. I can take two identical twins, and the only thing different between them is DNA, and I can say, hey, twins, go in a straight line, holding hands, and go 100 yards, and then at 100 yards, split. And I tell the dog, my tracking dog, hey, sniff this odor, this shirt, it's from twin number 1, not twin number 2. The dog, when he gets to that split, will follow twin number 1. How is he doing it? He's recognizing the DNA in that twin. We know dogs can sniff to the nanometer. The nanometer, you can make arguments that cancer detection dogs also are sniffing at the nanometer. Now, they're sniffing at between 2 and 5 nanometers is the smallest we've ever seen it, documented. And mycotoxins are between 1 and 5. So there's a chance that they can't pick it up, but we know it's a possibility that they are. So now, how do we prove that? Well, we have science to suggest they can sniff that deep. The truth is, in this space is still relatively new, the mold detection space. It is my desire to answer that question with a scientific study, and I hope to get that done before the end of the year. Because what that will allow us to do, if we can smell out mycotoxins, that opens up the door to multiple possibilities about even further accuracy with the dogs. Something I'm very excited about, something I'm very passionate about. Matt, you know I love the science. So for me, another opportunity to get back to the lab, if you will, and work these dogs and see what's possible. My hypothesis would be they absolutely can, but now I have to prove it. And that is going to take some time.
I would love that. It's just so hard to isolate toxins from spores. If you consider an Aspergillus niger spore, you know, the ochratoxin A mycotoxin on it can be 3,000 times smaller than the spore. Like, so now isolate that without having any anatomy of a spore or anything else, isolate those toxins. It sounds like a nightmare, Stephen, to try to do this, but I love that you have the passion for it, because it would be a dream to have that, to be able to say, hey, our dogs are trained. We are able to isolate these mycotoxins, and our dogs are trained on these, and they're now going in looking in for toxins, not just colonies.
Well, I'll say this. I didn't really give your audience, or my audience, our audience, like a metric on what that means, a micrometer, nanometer. So let's give an example. I don't have hair to pull out my hair. I'm follically challenged. Matt, you are not. So if you took out a strand of your hair, okay, and the circumference, right? So the edge, that circumference of your hair was the size of the earth, let's say, right, in size. So now that circumference is the size of the earth. A nanometer, or let's go the other way, micrometer, which is bigger, would be about the size of Texas, okay? So we know dogs, again, the follicle of hair, the size of the earth, can sniff out to where Texas would be. A nanometer would be about 5 football fields within Texas. So to give you reference of how small or how deep they're willing or can smell, that's the reference that we kind of use. It's incredible what they can do. And
it really is.
And those are the things we can prove, by the way. There are suggestions that even goes deeper than that, but it's not going to help this conversation. But there's possibilities that are probably endless.
It's mind-blowing how amazing dogs can be, how dialed in they can be. And I know you've shared stories with me in the past that just blew my mind, and it's amazing. But it comes down to finding a dog that meets all those requirements you said, finding a handler that checks all those boxes, meshing those two, seeing if they mesh, and making sure they have a strong relationship together and work together as a team. And it sounds so easy to, I'm going to get my cockapoo trained, and little Ruby here is going to be the best molten dog if anybody wants to take her to their house. It's very different from what it appears on the surface level. And I've seen this lots of times where people say, oh, we're going to get our dog trained maybe. And that's great if you do. I would never say don't, try to maximize what your dog can do. But the idea, the understanding of how many layers there are to this relationship, to the training, to the dog, to the understanding of the handler, of the meshing together, is really deep. It's not just, it's like mold toxicity. When someone comes into their group, says, I'm mold sick, what binder should I take? Well, you've got a very surface level understanding of what's happening here. There's a million layers we need to address. And it's the same thing you're explaining today between that handler and a dog.
For sure. And if you want to look at the training as another layer that we have to talk about, at what level are we asking a dog to sniff and have success? Because they'll stop sniffing deeper. So like think of a magnifying glass. So you have or a microscope rather. So you have something you want to see, and it only takes maybe 5 times the magnification. And you're getting rewarded every single time for, hey, just go 5 times magnification. That's all you need. Well, if that's what I'm asking the dog to do, that's as far as he'll go. But what if I say the thing that you're asking to look at or smell is at 100 times magnification? If the dog has not been exposed to that, he's going to stay at that 5 times magnification because that's where he's been asked to sniff. So that's why that important of mycotoxins, that question is so important, because once we can open that up and say, hey, look deeper, sniff deeper, there's reward even at the deeper level, it opens up the world a lot more to us. So my analysis about what I've seen a lot is dogs are sniffing mold at the 5 times magnification, not any deeper. Some of them are probably a little bit more, but we need the science to back up the protocols and how to get there. We have an idea because we've done it in different ways. So I'm cautiously optimistic we're going to be able to do that soon.
I love it. Okay, I'm gonna hit you with some easy questions because we've gone very deep on some of these. All right. Some people ask, what about crawl spaces and attics? And again, an attic could have a nice stairwell going up. It may have a ladder going up. It may have 12-foot headroom. It may not. A crawl space may be 18 inches that your army crawling through, or it may be 4 foot. So what does that mean when people say I have a crawl space or an attic and a dog go there?
Yeah, it's a great question because we know that there could be mold in attics and crawl spaces. And of course, that is a legit question. The truth is, every situation, it just depends on a couple things. Number one, how much mold or mold spores or mycotoxins, if a dog can sniff that deep, is present in your attic. And of course, what's in between the mold and spores and your floor? So you're going to have a ceiling, of course, maybe some cross beams and things that it has to permeate through in order to get down to the level where the dog is. So anytime we talk about a dog's ability to detect something, we always think about what's available to the dog. If it's not available to the dog, how the heck is the dog going to sniff it and have any success? If you take a hot air balloon and go up in the air, it doesn't matter that you have 1,000 pounds of an illegal substance on a drug dog. He's not going to get it. It's too far. What's available to him, what the molecules that come down to his nose, they have to be captured. And if they're not able to be captured, you're not going to have success. So that area, the attic space and crawl space, very difficult. Now, things like outlets give a really good opportunity for odor to come out. Number one, because if you look at the temperature of those outlets, they're usually warmer on that wall than anything else, especially when they're drawing power. So what does that mean? Where there's odor, there's more movements of molecules, which means better success for the dog. The hardest detection in the world is when it's frigid outside, because those molecules are close together. They're not expanding the way they need to for the dog to pick it up. So there are things we can do to combat that on the technical side as a handler that I can do. Like I can wet my dog's nose because he can capture more molecules and stuff like that. But it's very difficult. So dogs have limitations. Let's clear the air. They absolutely can be the answer for everything. And if it's not available to them, they simply are not going to be able to detect it.
So if there's easy access to a crawl space or an attic, is it safe for a dog to go there? Or is it dependent on each situation?
Depends on the training of the dog, and it depends on the totality. So if I can train my dog, and we have, to climb up a ladder or stairs, like really steep stairs or a ladder. But the question is, like, I have a 87-pound German Shepherd that will go through drywall. Like, the last thing I want him is to go up there and then fall through the ceiling, right? So, like, this is really cool when it comes to, this is the argument for smaller dogs. If I have a 35-pound dog that it has all the beautiful traits that we need for detection, he may be better suited to get up there and have success without any danger. But what other dangers are up there? Now you're talking about exposed nails and other things that the handler has to think about. So is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the safety and security worth the risk? Those are all questions that each handler has to make, and it depends on the situation.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, here's a good one. And this is one I wonder too, is depending where you live geographically, like I'm up by Michigan and all our register vents are in the floor because most of us have basements or HVACs in the basement. That's easy to snip the register vents. But what if you're in Texas and your vents are in the ceiling? That's very different. Can a dog alert to all these vents in the ceiling? Does enough drop straight down, or does it point up, or what does that mean? It seems we have it so easy when our register vents are in the floor as opposed to a ceiling.
Yeah, you're right. Super easy when it's on the ground. That is that's elementary part of detection. That's super easy. But you'll be surprised with the vents being where they're at. There's a reason why our protocols say when we get there, you're going to shut everything off. We're going to get a baseline sniff of the home. And then we're going to turn your HVAC system and we're going to push that air. And we compare how did the dog do in this room without the HVAC system on and with the HVAC system on. As soon as that dog starts to pick up his head, he's picking up these molecules and starts giving attention up high. And it wasn't doing that before. That is a telltale sign that there's something in your HVAC system you need to be worried about. It's very subtle. It could be only for a half a second. And if the handler misses it, it's going to be an issue. So those subtleties go back to the importance of good handlership. Without that, we'll miss it. So I always encourage handlers, before you enter a room, have someone record it. Have someone record the deployment. Why? Because you may miss it, because you may be looking at the next thing you're going to present for the dog to sniff, or maybe you see a danger that you're going to address and maybe move something that the dog could potentially get hurt by. And you may miss those subtle changes. So I love the ability to record what we do. It shows transparency. It's good training. You can go back and see if there was any mistakes made. And often you can find little things like that that you may have missed in during the live deployment.
I love that. I wouldn't have thought of that. I love days when I learn new things. And I've learned a lot today, Stephen. This has been wonderful. Okay, now you're going to remember this question from the group, and it tickled my fancy when I read it. And this is from Chris. Chris, I hope you watch this. Chris is the one that asked, if you try to hide something in a large amount of peanut butter, does that still work? Okay. And that's when I asked if you had any nefarious reason behind asking this. Chris, I'm just joking. But can you have a problem that gets overpowered? Like, say there's a problem in the kitchen from a dishwasher leak, and there's a giant chetomium and stacky problem under the kitchen cabinets, but an apple pie was just baked in the oven right behind it, and all this beautiful smell is coming out. Can there be a point where there's too much of that other smell to mask what they're looking for?
So, first off, awesome question. It made me chuckle when I saw that. It was a great question. So we have hundreds of examples of masking odors being present around train odor and the dog being able to discriminate between the two. So here's the difference between our noses, humans, and dogs' noses. When we smell steak, we smell steak. We categorize it as that smells like a steak on the grill. A dog can be like, oh, that's a ribeye, or that's a Wagyu A5 from Japan. They can differentiate things that our nose can't. Our nose generalizes a bunch. That is pizza. That is a burger. That is steak. We do well enough for us to know, oh man, that's a fart. I don't want to be anywhere near that, right? So that's really important, because that's how we say, oh man, this is not an area I want to be. I'm repelled by that. So the dog's ability in their olfactory system is wired differently than ours. They can pull different parts of, let's use pizza because that's a popular one. They can say that pizza has pepperoni on it. That pizza has a different type of sauce. The flour used in that pizza is different than this pizza. That's how they can differentiate each one of those odors. So when you talk about masking odors, it doesn't necessarily matter that, like, let's say I'm asking a dog to sniff out mold in a house that had a leak of gasoline in it. You and I, as soon as we go in there, we're gonna be like, oh my God, gasoline everywhere. That's the only thing that's going to overpower our senses. The dog can discern, okay, there's gasoline. I smell that. However, can discern between every other odor in there, where you and I are nose blind. All we smell is gasoline. The dog can differentiate and pick out, oh my God, this trained odor, especially if he is motivated to find it because he's been reinforced. He can find it, no problem. It comes back to, is it available to the dog? If the odor is available to the dog, they can find it.
Wow. Yeah, that was eye-opening too, because it seems to me, but like you explained, because we generalize, we smell the biggest thing.
Mhm.
It's like they would mask it. Like if you got bricks of cocaine coming across the border, you smear them with peanut butter. Again, Chris, I'm not suggesting that you have any nefarious reasons behind asking this, but to me, it'd be like,
Chris, don't do it, Chris. Don't do it.
it's like they wouldn't be able to smell it. But again, I'm learning things, and that's why I love having these conversations. Okay. That bangs out the easy things. Let's touch on, I know we've spent a lot of time and we've hit most of the questions that we had in the group there, but I just want to know, what I've learned through this conversation is that there's so many layers to this, to getting a dog done, to get a dog trained properly, I should say, handled properly. What does that mean in the big scheme of things for people having faith in different dogs? Because different dogs are trained at different places, and different places will have different training methods, and they may or may not train the handlers the same. So you mentioned certifications before. Is there a type of certification people should be looking for? Or in general, how do we know that we're getting a dog that was trained really well? I guess I'll leave it. That's as simple as I would put it.
Sure. Mold is a serious problem. So I kind of cussed you out before because you brought it to my attention. I didn't know how serious it was, but it is serious, and you have families who need answers. And anytime the option of a mold dog comes up, they should be looking for a team that's going to further their journey toward their health journey, right? So the problem with the industry when I first got in was there was no standardized way of doing it. In other words, my neighbor who has no dogs and doesn't really like dogs, sucks for him because he lives next to me. He may grab a dog from the shelter, introduce it to a mold sample of some kind, ask the dog to sit and say, look, my dog knows how to find mold now. Basically, he's a mold dog, and I can have this small business, and I could get a DBA the next day, and in a week I could be in business. I could make make a logo and start a website, and now I am a mold detection business, and they can do it all in a week. And I've seen that, and it's not to knock anybody. Anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur and utilize dogs, contact me. I'll be happy to help you. But we want it to happen the right way, and we want to do it in a way that's scientifically validating, and we want to make sure that the attention to details that should be there are there. So there are people out there like myself who I love to mentor people through the process. Before coming on, there was no certification, national certification. So I want to point out a couple things. There are vendors that sell dogs that will certify your dog. Matt, the problem with that is if Steve sells you a dog and I say that dog is certified or you're certified, there's a conflict of interest because I'm the one who trained and there was an exchange of money. I have a vested interest to say that dog meets a standard. In police work, it's a huge no-no for a lot of reasons. It won't be upheld in court. There'll be some serious problems. So what we have is these third-party organizations that all they are certifying organizations. They're not attached to a kennel selling dogs or training dogs or anything. All they do, their only purpose is for teams to come to them, evaluate the team, and meet a standard. That standard is really important, is based on a paper written in the early 2000s called the Swig Dog paper. The Swig Dog paper is basically lays out the best practices for all of the United States and working dogs. So recently, Swig Dog has morphed into something else, but it's not official. So let's just, without having to go there, the Swig Dog is the best practices standard. So every certification in the United States at least meets that best practice. There was nothing prior to today for mold dogs. Well, recently we got with the American Working Dog Association, which is a third-party organization, not attached to a kennel, not to be confused with AWD, which is the American Working Dog, which is attached to Von Lick Kennels, which great place. Know the owner, Kenny Licklider, amazing dude, has done wonderful things for our country. And he's a vet, and he's done so many things. Can't speak highly enough about him. But that certification is attached to a kennel. So often it doesn't hold as much weight as a third party, like I said. So AWDA, we partnered with them to help them formulate the first mold detection certification. So prior to June 12th of 2025, there was no such thing. After June 12th, 2025, there is. And I would ask everybody who's considering to have a mold dog to ask that simple question: is your dog nationally certified by the American Working Dog Association? This by itself will now raise the standard for all dogs, because without that certification, they could simply say, I trained this dog personally and I have anecdotal evidence of the success. And by the way, it could be an amazing team. They could be very talented, but they still should be striving for that certification to show that they've met that standard. That's available to anyone in the world. We've certified teams in Brazil and South Africa and other places. So any team that wants that is open. It's not for just mold dog nose or anything like that. This is for anybody who chooses to have that standard. So as a consumer, you should ask that question now. After June 12th, 2025, it's a possibility. Super easy. They can go online. They can look at their local certifying officials. And basically every state has certifying officials in major cities. All they have to do is contact them, set up a date to set it up, and then then good luck.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that there's something available nationally now. And that was very fresh, because this is June 21st.
Yes.
So that wasn't that long ago. But it makes sense because of everything we talked about that I learned in this conversation. It's just like mold inspectors. It's a sliding scale. Yep. And you can have that sliding scale on the dog. You can have that sliding scale on the handler, just like we have with mold inspection companies. It varies greatly in price, in quality, in knowledge.
Yep.
So it makes sense that there should be something like that. And we need the same thing for mold inspections, for mold inspectors. We need the same thing. And it not to be something easy, Steven. It needs to be, no, you don't just walk in and do a spore trap and you can leave and call it a mold inspection. And that's why.
Go ahead.
You go.
Oh, you have to go now.
I don't even remember where I was going now. So you go.
All right. So it's important. You mentioned it can't be easy. Okay. So what is that certification? What is the standard? Like what's the requirement for that certification? Well, there's an odor recognition part of the certification that confirms the dog indeed knows these odors that are individualized. All right. So and I sent you the list, and I'm horrible at pronouncing these molds, so you're going to have to say it for me. But all of those have to be recognized by the dog individually. So what we do is we have different types of containers, and they could be different things. They could be glass, it could be metal, it could be wood, it could be high density polyethylene, which is really popular. But a container that the dog can't see what's in it and has some meshing where the dog can sniff. And there'll be a 2 rows of 6 is the minimum. So they have 12 boxes or whatever containers with at least 2 molds within the 12. And basically the dog will either indicate and say, yes, this is mold, or it's not, which is really important. So once they go through the recognition phase, then it's the operational phase. And the operational phase is simple. It's in a home, exactly where the dog is expected to have success with distractors. Homes that has cats and dogs and furniture and all these other things to make sure that the dog is successful. And then we have certain rules about how close the dog can get to that odor, right? Because we don't want them to alert 30 feet from the odor. We want them to get close enough where it's able to give us some idea of pinpointing where the odor is emitting from. So those standards are super important because that's what the consumer needs. The consumer needs to be sure that this specific dog can find black mold, and I'm going to mess up the name, so I'm not going to say them, all the other molds, and do it in a way that is conducive to what the consumer needs. And that's what the certification does.
And you just answered another question that I remember in the group, which was someone mentioned that a handler told them, and I could have this wrong, but it was about the smell of bacon. Like when the dog walks in, like, we smell bacon, there's bacon here. does a dog walk in and say there's mold here? That's not really useful to us. We need to know where it is. The reason we're bringing in mold dogs is to say, is there a concern around my toilet, around the shower, under a window, by the dishwasher? We're hiring them. The whole purpose is to help identify sources so they can be safely remediated, so we can make this a healing space again.
Sure.
So I'm glad that you touched on that, because that answers that question. Does a dog just walk in and potentially go and start hitting everywhere because it's just overwhelmed? Well, a good dog, a well-trained dog, is going to be able to identify in those locations to give us the data we're looking for.
Exactly. And that certification requires that.
Yeah.
So without that, if that dog is alerting too far away, that's a failure. We'll allow the dog and the handler to work that problem out, because that's part of the certification as well. Do they work well together? So if the handler sees the dog is faulty, what can I do to make them right? They're not going to know where the odor is. Everything is called a blind test. So the handler doesn't know. Of course, the dog doesn't know. Which is important. But here's a tip for your consumers, people who want a trained mold detection dog. If they have a sample of mold, once they're done clearing parts of your home, and let's say your guest room or something is clear, no mold there, we on the Mold Dog Know side will say, hey, go ahead and place this training aid somewhere in this room that we know is clear. Don't tell me where it is. You're going to follow me. And essentially, it's testing what we already certified to. If we're about the business of providing good service, then there shouldn't be, however, we're only going to do it under these circumstances. No, test us. We invite it. And if you're hiring a company who doesn't allow you to do that, I would have a reservation about that. So of course, the area has to be clear first, but then you should be able to place that training aid in a place that's not in the ceiling somewhere where the dog can't get to. We will probably do it in places like a cupboard of some kind, somewhere where it's concealed but available to the dog. And that's what you want to see. You want to be able to test that ability of that working team.
No, that's perfect. That makes sense. All right, tell our group members a little more about Mold Dog Knows. If they say, yes, this sounds like a good team, how do they get in touch with you or want to learn more information?
Sure. I mean, the first thing is we're kind of redoing all of our website and our branding, because so many things are new within our business that it's like the perfect time to do that, right? And we're bringing the science behind everything. We want to be the industry leaders for those purposes. It doesn't mean that we're the only company out there. It doesn't mean we're the only good company, but we are absolutely going to be the company that's going to be reliable, that's going to have professional standards. When you have a dog go out there, it's going to be certified through the American Working Dog Association, that team rather. So molddogknows.com is the best way to do that. You could always message me personally on my socials asking questions about that. I have a feeling, Matt, that you and I will be doing this more often, only because the consumer will for sure, after listening to this, have more questions. Hopefully we've answered a lot of those questions.
We've answered a lot, a whole lot, more than I thought we could.
Yeah. But this may spark a question kind of, off topic about dogs that I'll be more than happy to address. But yeah, molddogknows.com. Get in touch with us there. If you want to see anything that we're doing on our social media, you can find us on social media. Predominantly on Instagram is where we have most of our followers. And what we're doing now is just scratching the surface. There are things that I was hoping I could speak about, but it sounds like we're a month early. There's some really cool things that we're going to be a part of that's going to make the overall mission.
You're leaving me hanging? I don't like there being secret things from me.
I'll tell you what, Matt, you and I could probably talk about it safely offline, but to our consumers, in just a couple months, I think we'll have some really big announcements that is going to allow us to further service the people who are having issues with mold in their home and utilizing dogs in a different way, kind of outside the box. But I think when people hear about what we're doing and the science that goes behind them, I think it's going to change the game for sure. And we're excited to do that. But those partnerships are like in the middle of happening. But I'm more than cautiously optimistic it's going to work. So just stay tuned, follow our socials when we make that announcement. We've already helped bring the American Working Dog Association certification. We're going to be the leading people in that fight to make sure that we're bringing a lot of science behind what we do.
I love it. I'm not going to hit you with any more questions because this has been a long time. I'm overwhelmed with everything I've learned. So I can't imagine everyone else that didn't have a heads up on this trying to absorb all this. But
Yep.
this has been amazing information. I love mold dogs. Like I said, it's in number 2 in my 3-step process. But having confidence in hiring is a common question people have, and that's why we invited the Toxic Mold Answers community to come up with questions, and they showed up amazingly with these amazing questions. And then you answered a million more on top of that, teaching me things I didn't know. So this has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you, man. And but part of what we tried to tackle too is our home base is Dallas Fort Worth, but what about the people in Ohio? Well,
Yeah.
we have a team that will be trained and certified in Ohio within the next month, which is exciting because that area is going to be incredible for us. And we have a team in Vegas now that's going to be operating within just a couple weeks. We have 2 teams in Chicago that will be operating here in about a month or 2. And we have, where am I missing? Oh, in Portland, Oregon, we have 2 teams over there. So what we're doing is setting the standard, making sure that everybody meets the standard. And once they prove they can meet the standard, we're going to support them. And now you don't have to worry about having to pay extra travel expenses for a dog to come from Dallas, Fort Worth to go to Ohio. Now we will have our local team. We want you to know who that is. We want you to know the dog. And that's the process. Like in the next couple months, we're going to be making all of those available to the public and those announcements, but we're excited about it. Florida is another one that we're working on right now. But remember, quality handlers, quality dogs. It's harder than you think. We've interviewed people, a lot of people with good intentions, but they either don't have the time to do or they don't have the right dog. And it's okay. We'll help them as far as we can, but we have to put the right athlete for the right job. And that's what these dogs are. So we're working on that. So by the way, if you feel like you fit the mold, like you have some handler experience and you think you have a dog that can do it, and you're in an area where we don't have a mold dog, contact us. Be happy to fly to you, analyze your dog, see if it'll work out, and then we can work out an opportunity for you to join our team.
I love that. And there's no such thing as too many good mold dogs. That's the problem we have with mold inspectors is the travel time, because we have so few, because your local one just doesn't cut it. They're at this end of the sliding scale when chronically sick people need you at this end. So I'm happy. I had no idea you were growing this big. This is amazing. I love that you're going to have qualified, certified dogs and handlers across the nation. Keep growing. We need it. We need all the help we can get.
By the end of the year, we'll be in Europe and in Africa, just so you know, like that. I'm positive that's going to happen. We have our people there, but we have to take care of the U.S. first. We have to make sure that everything is perfectly in line with our mission, and then we can focus on expanding outside of the country. But that is definitely going to happen before the end of the year, in my opinion. So
I'm excited to hear about Europe, because we've got so many clients over there, and they're like, we have nothing. We don't have a mold inspector that does anything extra than an air sample. We don't have remediators that understand this. We have no mold dogs. There may be an answer coming, Stephen.
A big answer in a big way, and it's going to be exciting for everybody who is wanting and needing that service of a mold dog entering their home. And by the way, we haven't talked about it, but dogs can sniff out cars for mold and RVs and other things. So yes, the home is very important, because that's our dwelling. That's where we're laying our head at night. It's a lot of time spent there. But we do other inspections on top of that. But Matt, this has been fun, dude. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your community's great questions. I'm going to continue to follow. I try to just be an observer, so I'm not imposing. You have some guys in there in your community who have some canine experience, and they're giving great advice. Shout out to those guys who are trying to push good information. Sorry, I don't remember names. I'm really bad with names, but continue to do so. If someone asks me a question, I will answer it, but I'm never going to impose on a conversation and say, well, actually, I think it's this. That's just not who I am. So if you do want to contact me about something, I'd be more than happy to. But if you tag me in something and say, Steve, this person said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not, conflict is not my thing. That's not what I want. So just to clear the air. So anything else on your end, Matt, that you want? Because I know you have products, you have things that you do to help people out. Is there anything that you want to shout out? Because I don't know who's interviewing who at this point.
I know we're going back and forth. I love it. That's a good podcast when you can't tell who's the interviewer. We both have questions and we're both learning, and that's what I love about conversations like this. But if you have, you have a lot of canine people that aren't really about mold. And I guess one of my resources that would be good that if they're listening to this going, oh my goodness, maybe mold is a problem. And that's why I made mold.org, which hosts the most data-driven mold sickness quiz. And you can choose, I'm a woman, I'm a man, this is for my child, and answer, and that'll give you the percent chance that mold could be a factor in their health. And so when you have people getting into this and people in the canine industry that are listening that weren't in mold, that's a good tool to send people to just, hey, it's a good way to dip your toe in the water and see, hey, could these health effects be mold related? Hey, I know someone with a house that I saw mold and they have kids with problems or something. Hey, send them to mold.org. That's a quick, easy quiz in 60 seconds. You can find out if mold could be a factor in your health. Obviously, pharmacy.com, I run a pharmacy with an F, like a farm, like grow your medicine. It's all about safe and natural ways to heal the body. Pharmacy.com, that's where we have supplements. You can book consultations with our mold specialists, is where we get the lab testing done. Toxic Mold Answers, like Steven said, on Facebook. Toxic Mold Answers is the group name. We're going to hit 70,000 members in a couple days. The biggest group right now is 70,000. It took them 15 years to get there. We're 2.5 years and we'll pass them in the next 2-3 weeks. It's not a competition. I'm just pointing out the growth because people are asking for help. And Toxic Mold Answers is run by practitioners. We know this inside and out, and it's well moderated. That some people do get the boot when they're causing misinformation, because with my group, I wanted to be on point and data driven and based on what I know works in the process that's needed for testing a home properly to get the best data we can, to have the most puzzle pieces to see this picture as well as possible. Like you love data, I love data. And I've developed these processes for testing the home, for testing the body, and the protocols to undo that damage to the body. And that's what that group is about. And that's why it's growing insane. We've had over 1,000 people a day join, when the word gets out. I mean, some days are low too, but we're growing at a breakneck speed. And we have all these people that are looking for answers. And that's why I love this conversation, because talking about Hermes, talking about mold dogs, talking about inspection. So that's what the Toxic Mold Answers group is. And then for everybody listening, this is the most underutilized tool. It's moldy.ai, moldi.ai. That's my custom AI service built around mold illness, covering body and home. And this has 4 million words of training, all created by me or curated by me from trusted data, trusted individuals that will give, you can ask it anything. Please go and be specific as you can. Say, what does high arabinose on my organic acid test mean? And it's going to tell you that you have a candida problem. You have a yeast problem because mold drives that. So I have poured myself into this. I call it digital Matt. It's my digital clone, Steven.
Are you telling me that you have Chat GPT for mold? Is that what you're telling me?
Better. It's far more accurate than Chat GPT because it's all the nuances, right? It's just like how Chat GPT would answer about mold dogs. You say that's generally right, yes, but here's all the things you don't know from clinical experience, from deep diving on these things. That's what moldy.ai is. So I'm just throwing that out there because, I mean, we've got a lot of great users making use of it, but it is like sometimes in my group when I'm answering people's questions, I just go take a screenshot of Moldy's answer because it immediately spits out these in-depth answers based on clinical knowledge and experience, not just general Chat GPT based on scraping the web. You get a lot more better data. So I'll leave it at that. I've got so many things in the works too, Steven. I know you guys are blowing up. I've got another service that I'm working on right now and another one coming out later in the summer. I just love all things mold, like you love all things dog. And it's just it's a beautiful meshing between the two because we each need each other.
Yes. Yeah, it is beautiful. I think it goes without saying, nobody, well, I'll say this. A lot of people don't have the opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with you. And you've given me a lot of your time to help me understand things, even though some of those things give me nightmares, whatever. I do appreciate the time that you've taken to help explain things because I'm sure like me, I have a lot of the same questions asked and I'm repeating myself over and over and over again. Maybe this is why you made moldy.ai so that you don't have to repeat it over and over again. But you've always been like a gentleman. You've always been awesome. And I appreciate the candor conversations we can have about things. And I always look for the hallmarks of someone who, when they don't know something, can just simply say, I don't know. Like we're not sure. We think this is the case. I think that's really important in our industry. There's too many people who state things as their absolutes. And that's when I think we get ourselves in trouble. And in any profession, we have to be careful with that. And I just want to commend you for all the hard work you're doing for people and all the different ways you're finding to help people, which is crazy. So thanks, man.
I'm leveraging technology to the maximum amount to reach as many people as possible. But this was wonderful. Thank you, Steven. I learned so much today, and I know that our group members are going to be extremely satisfied with this. If they watch the whole thing through, there's so much here, and I learned so much, and we answered not just the common questions, but a million things that even I didn't think about and came to mind. So thank you again for taking this time to talk to me about the science behind canine detection and mold dog nose itself.
Awesome, man. Thank you guys for listening today on today's podcast. If you want to contact me, you can find me on social media at Next Level Canine Texas. And as part of the new Mold Dog Nose team, you can email me at Steven@MoldDogNose with any other questions. I'm on Matt's community as well, so you can look my information up there to contact me. And we're just happy to have this conversation and excited about what the future brings. So thanks again for listening, y'all.